Hey, Patreon. Welcome back to the Spotlight. This is our show where we get to talk to wonderful people in the creative space of all the great pop culture that we enjoy. And I am sitting this evening with Heather Antos. Good evening.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing great. Well, Heather, I have, because, you work, I would say behind the scenes, but comics is like, well, everything's behind the scenes because you're looking at pictures. But, I have been a fan of your work far longer than I had any clue. You've been at Marvel. You were involved in the launch of the Star Wars books back in 2015. You're a co-creator of Dr. Aphra, which is my wife's favorite Star Wars character, and the Killer Droids, and Chrysanthemum, or I always say his name wrong, even though they said it.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, even though he was in that somewhat regrettable Boba Fett show, but we don't need to talk about that. And then these days, you are with my Star Wars guys, Star Trek guys. I for our network, I run a show on Star Wars and I run a show on Star Trek. I refuse to, and I'll get into that, but I refuse to say, oh, one's better than the other because that thing makes me completely insane. But no, it's awesome that you're here. Tell me how you got started in the world of popular culture. How did you get it rolling?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up being a fan, right? Like we all did. One of my first memories is actually watching TNG with my dad, growing up and watching that, him sharing
Same.
Indiana Jones with me. That was a big part of my childhood. And of course, the classic Batman 66 television show, Adam West, Burt Ward. That show forever has my heart. And so it was just always, a part of my life, a part of, what I was interested in. And I always loved reading. I won a lot of reading competitions as a kid, actually. And I've been, drawing stories my entire life. So, uh, even though I never like knew being a professional in the comics industry was a possible trajectory for me as a kid, like it really makes sense, looking back and seeing all the steps that I took in my life that I ended up doing what I do today.
Right. Awesome. Good stuff. So yeah, I alluded to the fact that everybody's got hot buttons in life. People who say, oh, Star Trek. Well, I'm more of a Star Wars guy. Like, oh my God. But you can see looking around me, that's the space I live in. It's
Yeah.
what I love. But so let's talk about Star Wars first. It's before 2015. We know that title is coming along. It's being publicized. How did you get involved in that, or when did you get involved in that 2015 launch?
Yeah, so it's funny, growing up in my younger 20s, I never considered myself that much of a Star Wars nerd because I was surrounded by like Star Wars nerds. And so it wasn't until I was at Marvel and like I'm name dropping alien species and planets around like who I consider to be the nerds of all nerds, right?
Right,
Marvel
right.
Comics editors, and they're just like, "What are you talking about?" That I was like, "Oh, maybe I do know Star Wars things." Um, but yeah, no, so I was actually a part of a 6-year long Star Wars tabletop RPG campaign leading up to my time at Marvel. So like when everyone asks, "Are you a Star Wars fan? Like, did you grow up liking Star Wars?" Absolutely 100%. Yes. Like I grew up playing, Princess Leia, Han, Luke, on the playground as kids, all of that stuff. But yeah, I um got involved just right before the beginning of the launch. 2014 was when I decided I wanted to be a comics editor and really began pursuing that path. And in that journey, I did some informational interviews with just any editor that would talk to me, that would respond to like my tweets or emails. And one of those was Jordan White. And at that time, Jordan White was an associate editor working primarily on the Deadpool comics at Marvel. And Deadpool was one of my favorite characters. I did a lot of pop culture reviews and interviews and stuff for the comics. So we were kind of aware of each other's existence because of that. And I started self publishing and producing my own anthologies just to kind of give myself my own comics internship. Um, and while that was happening, Jordan got promoted and got offered the Star Wars, got took over the Star Wars launch and everything for Marvel. And I had run into him at a subsequent Comic Con in New York Comic Con. And he was hiring an assistant, and he knew of all the work I had been doing and just asked, would you ever be interested in moving to New York? At the time I lived in Michigan, and I said,
You're from Michigan?
I'm from Michigan. Yeah.
I'm in Michigan. Where are you from in Michigan?
Niles.
I live in Grand Rapids.
Oh my God. There you go.
Niles is practically South Bend. I go into Indiana. Yeah, I go into Indiana for work. I'm headed there tomorrow. I didn't get that. That's so funny that you're from Michigan. Okay, derailed. Sorry, back to you.
No. All good. I love it. But yeah, so I said, yes, and he sent me the link to fill out the application. I filled out the application. I did interviews, and 2 months later, I was moving to New York to work on Star Wars comics. So I was hired specifically for Star Wars.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so, this is wild. Oh my God. And from Niles, Michigan. Yep. Do you know, now I have a question for you.
Okay.
Name of famous 1960s musician from Niles, Michigan.
Oh gosh, I don't know.
Oh my God, I figured that would be local Lori.
I know. There's the one guy from oh God, what's his name? He did Moni. That's the guy,
yeah. Tommy James and the Shondells.
Yes.
That's the only thing I know about Niles, other than I when I'm driving out of South Bend, I drive into Niles.
Well, Niles also has, this is going to be a non-comics podcast now, but Niles also has the second bassist from Styx. Is from Niles. So yeah, there you go.
There we go. I love it.
And a famous train station. So.
Oh, awesome. I'm a music junkie, as you can tell, because otherwise, why would I pluck that out? But all right, let's actually talk about comics and stuff like that. So you're at Marvel, you're working on Star Wars, great characters are coming out. We're getting all this great original IP. So this was your first foray into working in the comics world. This was job number one.
Yeah. This was the first professional paid me health insurance comics
right.
job. I had done little freelance things here and there previously, but Marvel, I jumped in the deep end. I surpassed the deep end and I jumped in the ocean.
Oh my God. And swimming and crushing it. It's 10 years later and you're still doing it. So you were an assistant editor at that time. What does an assistant editor do? What's a day in the life?
Yeah. So assistant editor is assisting the editor in all of their needs. And as well as you're doing a lot of the administrative work. You're doing a lot of the I don't want to say grunt work, because without assistant editors are truly unsung heroes of the comics world. You are pulling all the reference for all your creators. You are tracking, you are building the schedules. You are the one who's building the schedules, who's following up with all the creators. You're suggesting creators to your boss, hoping they'll listen to you and hire you, or hire them. You are the one who is keeping the trains rolling on time. It's a lot of administrative, making sure people get paid, making sure people are contracted, making sure, the inks make it to the colorist and the colors make it to the designer, and it's the right files, and, tracking revisions, and you are doing all of that for 15 to 20 different projects all at once.
Oh my gosh. So when, how is there a moment, or did it just happen in a different way that turned into the aspect of creating Dr. Aphra and Satin?
So all credit for Dr. Aphra truly goes to Kieran Gillen. That truly Kieran Gillen, Salva LaRocca for her design. How I describe the creative aspect of what comics writing, art, editing is, we're all fans of pop culture. We're all fans of these characters. We're all fans, of all of it. And we all sit around with our friends on our group chats after the latest episode of Ironheart drops. And we're all like, wouldn't it be cool if they did this? Or what if this character showed up? Or, I wish their costume was X, Y, and Z. That's the job. That's I get paid to do that. And then make it real. So that's how all of that, kind of happens. And then of course with IP like Star Wars, you have the extra element of everything has to go through Lucasfilm.
Oh my gosh. As well. That must be whoa. So how did working along with Star Wars, how did working along with Star Wars turn into your work you did on Deadpool and then Gwenpool, thinking of other pools, evolve from that? I mean, how did that go?
I mean, Jordan was the editor on Deadpool as well. So
Gotcha.
being his assistant, I worked on everything that he worked on. And it's
Gotcha.
actually really funny because when I was interviewing for Marvel at the time, the only Marvel comic I read and kept up with was Deadpool. I was definitely more of a DC girly. Big into the Bat family. I'm a huge Green
Yeah.
Lantern fan. Kyle Rayner for
Ooh.
life.
We had Ron Mars on as a guest.
I
It's
love
actually
Ron.
it's
Yeah.
coming out in a couple of, I think maybe in a couple of weeks. We recorded it a while back, but yeah, I will make sure you have it.
I love Ron. Yeah, he's good people. I just sat next to him at a con a couple weeks ago. But so yeah, like when I was interviewing for Marvel, actually, it's funny. I turned to my friends and I was like, "Should I read other Marvel comics? Should I pick some up?" And so I like picked up Spider-Man and like a bunch of the Evergreen, you know,
Mm-hmm.
Secret Wars and like all the classic,
Right.
classic.
Oh, I got the big Secret Wars
Yeah.
map on my back wall.
Yeah.
Got that from the shop back in 2015.
So yeah, so that's anything he worked on, I worked on, and I was very fortunate that Jordan is a very collaborative editor. He's very open to like hearing my ideas, like, and letting me cast covers, letting me suggest talent for things, letting me pitch ideas for concepts for books, because there are some editors that are very like, this is my creative vision, and not really.
This is my box.
Yeah,
Stay out of my box.
stay out of my box. This is my thing. You just make sure the schedule is run. But Jordan was very open to letting, it really felt collaborative. It really felt like a team,
Yeah.
rather than like boss assistant. So I was able to play and learn a lot in that time.
Hey, Secret Friends Unite, let me tell you about Zencaster. We use them for our show, and now they're supporting us. Zencaster is now the all-in-one solution making podcasting easy. It's the ultimate web-based podcasting solution. Provides high-quality audio and video podcast production and hosting. With a full suite of professional tools, podcasters can seamlessly record, produce, and publish studio-quality content, all from one dashboard. Being a creator has never been easier. And we chose Zencaster because of the ease of use, high quality output, and it makes it super easy for our guests to come on. We had multiple solutions we tried before, and Zencaster has just been the best fit for us. Why Zencaster? It's now super easy to record a podcast with Zencaster. Log in using your browser and start recording a high-quality podcast right away. Record studio-quality sounds and up to 4K video with your guests. Feel a sense of zen knowing Zencaster's multi-layered backups ensure you always have your recordings in the highest quality, even if the connection is unstable. Have you ever worried what you sound like? Zencaster's post-production process makes you sound buttery smooth. It automatically removes those ums and ahs in your recording. It removes those awkward pauses in conversation too. Set the right podcast loudness and levels while reducing background noise with the click of a button. So if you're interested in making an easy, high-quality podcast just with the click of a browser button, go to Zencaster.com/pricing and use my code SFU1. You'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencaster paid plan. I want you to have the same easy experiences I do for all my podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story. Now back to the show.
Yeah. Wow. Awesome. So you're at Marvel. That time kind of comes to an end. You're moving on. You're working on other projects, and you end up in Star Trek land, which is like, and I have been, I put it in my notes, I tuned back in just this week because I was feeling the sweet loss of Lower Decks in my life, because the second volume started, I bought the first issue, and then I kind of drifted away from it. But then I'm like, I saw a clip somewhere, somebody posted something, I went back, I'm a digital reader. I snagged the other issues and I resubscribed. Yes, you're welcome. And I realized that other titles are coming to an end and I probably ought to get caught up. And, the lore war was going on. I'm like, oh, that looks kind of interesting. So I should tune back in. But surrounded by Star Trek your whole life, you're a Trekker through and through. We have a great show. I would love to have you listen to it sometime, or even guest. It'd be incredible to have you be a guest on our show. But how did that job come into your life?
Yeah. So I was in between Marvel and IDW. I was at a small publisher called Valiant. And so I was there for a couple years, but early 2021, I saw a job opening for IDW come up, and I really like the idea of working at IDW because IDW does both licensed, IP stuff as well as creator-owned stuff, and so you
Right.
kind of can touch both ends of the playground that way and have different creative challenges. And so I applied, and it was funny. I was actually hired originally to take over the Star Wars and Marvel all ages books that IDW was
Right. I
editing.
remember those.
Yeah, so I did those for the first year or so. And then IDW and Disney parted ways with those licenses. And at that time there's a bunch of editorial shifts happening, and my old boss at the time, John Barber, came to me and asked, what would you be interested in? And they were really hoping I would take over TMNT because that editor was leaving. And it was it's the biggest, it's the biggest franchise that IDW has. Last Airline's
Right.
going on, kind of a big deal. But I really had no interest. I just missed the Turtles. I think I was a little too young for the Turtles growing up.
Yeah, late 80s, early 90s, at least for me.
Yeah. And I'm in 90s baby, so I just missed them. And it's the superhero thing. I had done that, at Marvel. I wanted to try something new, and IDW had the Star Trek franchise, and I was really interested to see what I could do with that franchise because Star Trek has been around for 60 years, right? Next year is the 60th anniversary.
So crazy. Yeah.
And I truly believe that without Star Trek, we would not have the MCU as we have it today. We wouldn't have Star Wars as we have it today.
There's no doubt.
Star Trek was the first truly cinematic universe between TV shows and and novels and books and comics and all of that. They were the first one to expand era upon era upon era and have this with long-standing continuity. On top of, they're the first franchise to have fan conventions. And yet because they are truly the backbone of this pop culture industry, the franchise is still seen as nerdy even within the comic space. It's still seen as insular and niche within what is already considered an insular and niche
right
world.
Shrinking.
Yeah. And
right.
I think Star Trek is so cool. It's so silly. But you can have fun and serious and dramatic and play with genre. And I truly believe that people who turn their nose up at Star Trek have never watched Star Trek.
I think yeah, exactly, because Star Wars super accessible, and it's space lasers and wizards and stuff, and it's a little bit more digestible than Star Trek, which is it's vast, expansive, it's thoughtful. It talks about the world, our world, in bigger terms. So yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, no, exactly. And so and at the time, IDW was doing some cool stuff with the comics, but I felt like the Star Trek comics for at least the last, 10 years or so were made just for Star Trek fans. They were made for just the person who had seen every single episode and could catch every single Easter egg. And that's fine. But I really wanted to create a line of Star Trek comics that are for comics fans, that are for people who I love Spider-Man and I can love a Star Trek comic. I love, Teen Titans and there's a Star Trek comic for me. I wanted to create a line that talked to each other in the way that the Spider-Man books take place in the same universe as the Iron Man books that take place in the same universe as the Black Panther books. And so there's a little bit for everyone in that, and can play with genre like we're doing with Red Shirts, like we're doing deep sea Lovecraftian horror in the Strange New Worlds book this summer, comedy and interactive graphic novels like we're doing with Lower Decks.
I have that. I just bought that. I have to read it. Is it amazing?
We were nominated for a Hugo Award, which is kind of
I guess so. Yeah. All right. No, it is. I was looking at my queue just today, and I'm like, oh yeah, I bought that last week. I probably ought to tune into that. I'm getting through my shame pile from Simon and Schuster because I get advanced copies, and I'm like, I got to finish at least one of these a week to get back on track so I can start talking about them on the show.
Yeah.
So
So that was really what interested me about Star Trek is the ability to kind of redefine what a Star Trek comic in the modern era is.
nailed it. It's just such good stuff. No, it's amazing. No, I absolutely love it and have every intention to get more dialed in, especially after this conversation. So I have a couple of bonus questions, but I always like to do in kind of my wind down wrap up. What's going on right now in your professional life that you're super psyched about that you can talk about?
Well, that's the thing, right? There's so much I can't talk about.
Of
I will say I just signed some pretty cool NDAs about projects that I don't know exactly when we'll be able to announce for IDW, but I'm very, very excited about them. They'll be pretty huge when we do get to announce. But right now, the big thing on my plate, aside from Star Trek, is our scares line. So I don't just do the Star Trek comics, I also oversee all of our scares titles. So that's our Event Horizon, Sleepy Hollow, Twilight
Ooh.
Zone, Smile, A Quiet Place. Some of these franchises are getting comics for the first time ever.
Wow, I didn't know.
Yes.
That's
So
amazing.
Event Horizon, our comic that we're doing, is the first time there's been Event Horizon anything
Such a scary movie. My
since
God, even 30 years later.
1997, since the movie first came out. So, and it's horrifying. It is absolutely horrifying. Christian Ward and Tristan Jones are doing incredible, incredible work on it. A Quiet Place and Smile are, two hot franchises right now in the horror world. And this is their first time expanding into other medium and getting to play in those worlds, like with the filmmakers. It's been so much fun. So I can't wait to announce the concepts and creative teams that we're working with on those titles. It's I love horror, and getting to play with some of the biggest horror properties there are is such an honor and is so fun.
I love it. That's awesome. Good deal. God, it's so great to meet you, and so great to have you on here talking to us. I'm gonna toss a bonus round at you. I have 3 questions of such cunning. No, not really. What's the best Star Trek series for you?
Strange New Worlds. I love Strange New Worlds. I think it perfectly embodies everything that Star Trek is. It is wholesome, it is hopeful, it is progressive, it is heartwarming, and it is silly. Watching it both feels nostalgic and fresh and modern at the same time. When I first watched the show, when it first aired a couple years ago, I was like, oh, this is what the original series would be if it had a modern budget,
Right.
and was it season 2 episode 2 to Ad Astra per Aspera. I think it's the best Star Trek episode of all time. It's so good. I get chills even like thinking about it. Like it's just
Right.
such a perfect episode.
Yeah, we talked about that. We did a recap forward before the season starts. I, like most people in the press, I've seen the first 5 episodes of season 3, and oh my God,
Yeah.
holy cow. But yeah, I reflected back on that episode for that exact same reason. Just blew my mind. Best Star Wars film?
Oh gosh. Best. I mean, I think Rogue One. For me, because I've always been, if anyone's ever listened to me talk about Star Wars, I've always been more fascinated by the everyday normal guy in the Star Wars universe.
Yes.
Because these space wizards are rare. Like
Right.
but because the movies focus on them, it's almost like they're everywhere and ubiquitous.
Right. Right.
Anyone can be a Jedi, and I've always wanted to know. I think it's why I love Dr. Aphra so much, right? She's just a regular guy trying to
Right.
make it around in this world, and there's something so inspiring about this ragtag crew fighting against an empire, in a way that like is sort of what the rebellion is doing in A New Hope, right? But it feels more real in Rogue One.
Right.
And to see that story expanded upon in Andor is just
Oh God.
yeah.
Just so much. Just a peak Star Wars. That's what we talked about on my other show. Just about just how much we absolutely loved Andor. And oh, here's a little bit more difficult one, or maybe it's not. Absolute best comic shop in northwestern Indiana.
Oh, North.
I just thought about it on the spot.
So I didn't go to comic shops in northwestern Indiana.
No,
growing up.
where'd you
No,
get
I didn't.
where'd you get your comics?
I didn't get comics as a kid. I didn't get into
Oh.
comics until I was older. So I actually have to shout out Green Bay Comics in southeastern Michigan.
I know it. I'm originally from Metro Detroit, though not that part of it. Yeah.
Well, that was my comic shop in college, and I also worked there for a couple of years. Dan and Katie.
No kidding.
I love that shop. Definitely a very, I called it like a super well-rounded shop. They have, such a great kids selection, such a great kids corner, such a great indie selection. They're definitely not just your Marvel and DC shop, and Dan and Katie are great.
Awesome. That's good. And they just had a big anniversary. My buddy, who helped actually introduces me to a lot of folks like yourself, did a nice write-up. He's a journalist like I am. So, but I've never visited the shop. I'm from Grosse Pointe. Yeah, I'm from Grosse Pointe. I'm from the other end of Metro Detroit. So going down to Dearborn is just not along my track. So. Yeah. Well, this has been so great. And my God, I would love to keep talking to you. I would love to work with you more. I don't know how much you do podcasts, but I would love to stay in touch.
Yeah.
But this has been absolutely incredible. Where do people find you out there? I know you have a website and a lot of other stuff.
Yeah. At Heather Antos on all of the things, Blue Sky, Instagram. I'm still on Twitter. I don't use it as much these days. Blue Sky and Instagram are the best places to find me. And I will probably be coming to a Comic-Con near you sometime soon if I haven't already. I'm doing, I think, 17 shows this year, so I'm.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
Good for you. Well, hopefully we'll see you at Motor City Comic Con. That's obviously our big one here in Michigan. Yeah. So, well, great, awesome. Well, thanks for being here, patrons. Thanks for listening. If you are listening to this on our free network feed, please visit patreon.com/Secret Friends Unite. Try us out for 7 days and get to hear lots of great interviews like Heather Antos. Thank you so much, and have a great evening.
Thank you. You too.
This podcast is part of the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and podcast services around the galaxy, as well as video on our YouTube channel. You can support Secret Friends Unite by becoming a Patreon member, get bonus programs and more over at patreon.com/secretfriendsunite. Join our Discord community for even more discussions on all things geek. For all the latest updates on Secret Friends Unite, make sure to follow us on Threads at secret.friends.unite and visit secretfriendsunite.com. Find our merchandise at TeePublic and Redbubble. Thanks for listening, and may the Force live long and prosper.